All ladies and gents, the greatest speech in history, Alexander the Great and the Opis Mutiny, by the channel Epic History TV.
What I'm about to say.
Oh, okay. So his army was, going home after doing mutiny. So he killed 13 key people of that and then giving speech to his army.
Isn't meant to stop you returning home. As far as I care, you can go wherever you wish. But I want you to know how you have behaved towards me, and how I have treated you. I'll begin, as is right, with my father, Philip. When he found you, you were mere peasants, wearing hides, tending a few sheep on the mountain slopes, and you could barely defend them from your neighbors. Under him, you began living in cities, with good laws and customs, and he turned you from slaves into rulers over those very barbarians who used to plunder your land. He conquered most of Thrace, taking the best harbors so there was trade and prosperity, and put the mines to steady work. The Thessalians, they used to terrify you. Well, we rule them now. The Athenians and Thebans, always looking for a chance to attack Macedonia, were so humbled, myself playing my small part in the war, that they no longer take tribute from Macedonia, but instead depend upon us for their protection. My father went to the Peloponnese and put their house in order. Then he was declared supreme commander of all the Greeks for the campaign against the Persians, an honor not just for himself, but for all Macedonians. This is what my father Philip did for you. Great enough on its own, but small compared to what you've gained from me.
Damn.
I crossed the Hellespont, even though back then the Persians still commanded the sea. I defeated the satraps of the great King Darius, and made you rulers of Ionia, Aeolis, Phrygia, and Lydia, and took Miletus by siege. The rest of the land surrendered willingly, and their wealth became yours. All the riches of Egypt and Cyrene, which I won without a fight, are yours now.
Alexander flexing.
Syria, Palestine, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, all belong to you. The wealth of Lydia, the treasures of Persia, the jewels of India and the Outer Sea. You are now satraps. You are generals and captains. What have I held back for myself apart from this purple cloak and diadem? Nothing. No man can point to my riches, only the things I hold in trust for you all. And what would I do with them anyway? I eat what you eat. I get no more rest than you. Many times I have spent the night on watch so that you could sleep soundly.
Damn. Alexander's flexing here, but he's also speaking a lot of truth. And when you've done a lot of shit like this, of course you would say all this. Of course you would flex like this, because this is extraordinary. He's basically telling them you are nothing but small peasants. I made you kings and generals, and I have nothing more than you have. This is just incredible, man. Normally kings and emperors, they behave like kings and emperors. But the way he's saying here, when Alexander among his people were, behaving like one of his people, He stays in night watch and, don't take much of riches, give away to his people. This is incredible, man.
Who among you believes he's worked harder for me than I have for him? Come on! If you've got scars, strip and show them to me. I'll show you mine. There isn't one part of my body, the front at least, that doesn't bear a wound. My body's covered in scars from every weapon you can think of. Swords, arrows, stones, clubs. All for the sake of your lives, your glory, and your wealth. And yet here I still am, leading you, as conqueror of land and sea, rivers, mountains, and the plains. We've celebrated our weddings together. Many of your children will be cousins of my own. I've paid off your debts without asking how you got them, even though you're paid well enough and pillage every city we take.
Damn.
Many of you wear golden crowns, badges of courage and honor given you by me. Any one of us who was killed, who met a glorious end, we buried with full honors. Many now stand immortalized by bronze statues in Macedonia. Their families are honored and pay no taxes. Under my...
Alexander really took care of his army, man. This is some heavy stuff. I don't remember any emperor in the history that have done things like this, who was a big conqueror like this.
command, not one man has been killed fleeing the enemy. And now, I wanted to send back some of you who've been wounded or crippled, or have grown old, to be welcomed back home as heroes. But since you all wish to go, then all of you, go! Go home and tell them that your king, Alexander, conqueror of the Persians, Medes, Bactrians, and Scythians, who now rules over the Parthians, Chorasmians, and Hyrcanians as far as the Caspian Sea, who's marched over the mountains of the Hindu Kush, crossed the Oxus and Tanais rivers, even the Indus, first to cross it since Dionysus himself. I would have crossed the Hyphasis too if you hadn't cowered in fear.
Damn.
Who sailed into the Great Sea from the mouth of the Indus. Who crossed the desert of Gadrosia, where no one had ever led an army. Who took Carmenia, while my fleet sailed the Persian Gulf. When you get home, you tell them that when you made it back to Susa, you abandoned him and went home, leaving him under the protection of the foreigners you'd conquered. Perhaps this report of yours will seem glorious in the eyes of men, and worthy in the eyes of the gods. Be gone!
After the speech, the Macedonian troops begged Alexander for forgiveness, leading to emotional reconciliation between the king and his army. Alexander began to plan further conquest, but in Babylon less than a year later he succumbed to unknown illness and died, aged just 32. Okay.
Thank you to all the patrons.
Battlefield couldn't kill him, but illness did. This was great, extraordinary speech, man. You are nothing but a bitch. I made you the man, and now you're trying to leave me. Seriously, some of them, he was, you could hear the anger in his voice. Some of the comments were just awesome. Man, I have to watch this, Alexander the Great parts of the Epic History TV after Napoleon one. This was epic. Everybody, they mutinied, and after the speech they were like begging for forgiveness. This is, man, oh man, this was just awesome.